All right, the Lindbergh Schools Board of Education meeting number 1537 is now called to order. Meetings are now fully open in person as well as live streamed on YouTube. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends that fully vaccinated individuals wear face covering indoors in areas with high COVID-19 transmission rates. In addition to universal indoor masking for all teachers, staff, students, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status. Therefore, face coverings are required for all individuals tonight that are in attendance. And just a brief statement, we are missing a few board members tonight, but we do have a quorum. They had either personal or professional things that took them away. It's sometimes tough in the summer, but we do have a quorum here, so we'll move forward tonight. 2.0, Dr. Lake, do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do not.
Okay, knowing that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Jen, second by Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance as you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We have no items in 4.0 or 5.0, which are the special recognitions and commendations, so we'll move to 6.0, which is citizen comments regarding agenda items. So at this time, we will hear comments from any citizens regarding topics that are on tonight's agenda. We do have several requests tonight. We limit this portion to 60 minutes total. Everyone gets 3 minutes to speak. And any non-agenda items, the total will be 30 minutes. And you get 3 minutes in that portion as well. So when I call your name, please come forward, state your name, the agenda item you're speaking on, and then your 3 minutes will begin at that time. So the first person we have is Stephanie Gurley Thomas.
Okay, if I pull my mask down to talk.
Yes.
My name is Stephanie Gurley Thomas, and I'm speaking on masks. I have children at Long and Truman schools. I'm a volunteer in the district and an employee as well. I don't like to wear masks, and I find them to be a great hindrance. I'm severely hearing impaired and read lips to communicate. Masking has been very isolating for me, and the impact is frustrating and maddening. In June, I responded no masks to the survey that was sent out by the district. Just a week or two later, I regretted my answer on that survey because of the uptick of cases and the Delta variant and the additional threats to the unvaccinated and kids. I really hate wearing masks, but I know if we work together to mask and vaccinate, wearing them will be temporary. I mask for myself, for my unvaccinated son, and for my community. I wholeheartedly support masking in all of our district buildings and on buses. The following letter of support has been signed by over 1,000 people in the Lindbergh community. It was sent to each of you today and to our local elected officials. While many of us have remained somewhat silent on the issue, we feel it is essential to publicly express our support of your efforts and our own pro-masking stance. This is the letter. We, the parents, staff, and community of the Lindbergh School District, support the district's Green Light Plan for the 2021-2022 school year. Our desire is the same as the goal of the district's plan, quote, to make sure that full-time in-person learning continues for all students in a safe, supportive, and healthy environment district-wide. Ultimately, to return to a normal school environment as soon as possible. For those reasons, and to ensure the safety of our students, teachers, staff, and community as a whole, we commend the decision to require masks for all students and staff on all district campuses and buses, regardless of vaccination status. We appreciate and agree with the science and facts used by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to determine universal indoor masking is necessary to keep our schools safe and to keep our kids in an in-person learning environment. Further, the Academy The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends universal masking in schools and emphasizes the importance of masking to maintain in-person learning. Again, we applaud the district for following these guidelines. Finally, thank you for working so hard and tirelessly for making difficult decisions and for continuing to serve our community with the standards of excellence we have come to expect, especially in these very challenging times. Thank you.
Okay. I will say this, let's limit the crowd reaction. We all have an opinion, everyone does in life, but if we could just hold the applause and booing or whatever that is, and just be respectful to one another, that would be greatly appreciated so we can move forward and continue to take these public comments. Thank you. Next we have Justin Hill.
All right, I'm going to say basically the exact opposite of what she just said. Now, my purpose here tonight is basically just to lay the facts out, because we do actually have data. We have opinions, but we have data. As it stands right now, there is no data that supports mask wearing to stop any type of viral illness. We've had this evidence for decades. Most of you, and I believe Mike and Christy, you guys responded back to me, received my email of the article that was put out by the CDC in May of 2020, which stated that masks do not stop the spread. Neither do hand washing, by the way. Thought that was interesting. So what most people will say then is like, okay, whatever, you know, whatever, the masks don't work, whatever. Maybe they do, we don't know. Well, the next question we should ask is, are the masks harmful? Because there is significant data that the masks are harmful, okay? This data has been done with surgeons who wear masks for like 7 hours, and I can read, said a 2008 study revealed a decrease in oxygen saturation of arterial pulsations and a slight increase in pulse rate compared to preoperative values in all surgeon groups. The decrease was more prominent in surgeons aged over 35. So inhaling particulate matter as well through masks is very dangerous for kids as well. Now, the reasoning that we were given as residents and people who had kids in this district for the necessity of wearing masks so they don't have to quarantine. I spoke directly with Tim Fitch through email, who is our county council representative for a lot of us in this district, and there is no quarantine rules in St. Louis County. So that to me is invalid. We do not have to quarantine. There are no quarantine guidelines. The CDC is not an elected body. It has no legislative purpose. We do not have to follow the CDC. The survival rate for children aged 0 to 19 for COVID-19 is 99.997%. This is also referenced from the CDC.gov. So there's basically zero risk. Our kids have more of a risk of dying than falling down a flight of stairs. So I really don't see a purpose in requiring masks for anybody, and knowing that there is harm involved, we should really rethink what that is. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, and forgive me if I don't pronounce your last name correctly. Mallory Sitzcorn?
Hello. I'm Mallory Sitzcorn. I have a third grade student at Sappington Elementary, and my question is, and I emailed you, Dr. Lake, yesterday, and I'm sorry if I get emotional. My son has severe asthma, and he can't breathe very well with the mask on. There's nothing set up for pre-existing health conditions in schools. I've had doctor's notes emailed to the school because he coughs. He lives with a cough. And they said if he has a cough, he will immediately be sent home regardless of the pre-existing health conditions, even though it's documented on paper. And because there's two choices this year, in-person learning or virtual learning, he will be isolated even more from his peers and his classmates and his teachers because of this. And I don't think it's okay. And it's not fair to kids who live with these pre-existing conditions
that can't help it. And it's not fair to the parents who then have to listen and try to help your kids feel like there's nothing wrong with them. I emailed the school nurse twice, you, Dr. Lake, and the school principal, and they told me that it had to be documented from his pulmonologist that he has a cough every day, and it was. And they said it's absolutely not going to stand at school. If he has a cough, he's sent home. And there's a big difference between pre-existing conditions, he's not ill, and there's a difference between sickness. And we've been dealing with asthma since he was 2. And I just feel like in this district, especially, this is discrimination. And there's nothing set in place for these children. And I don't think it's fair, because he shouldn't feel like he's different or be sent home from school because he's just clearing his throat or has a cough because of allergies. And I'd really like something to be done, not only for my child, but all the other parents in the district dealing with disabilities and pre-existing health conditions. That's it.
Thank you. Next speaker, Jessica Crandall.
Hi, I'm Jessica Crandall. I actually wanted to share a fact about the masks and the carbon dioxide that your children are breathing in and you're breathing in every day. It's actually 5 times higher than the normal rate that you should be breathing in, according to the University of Copenhagen. So, and also, a main reason for SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, is carbon dioxide rebreathing. You should study it. You should look it up. It's essentially what you're doing to yourself and to our children, and I'm not going to stand for it with my kids. I hold a bachelor's degree in human environmental studies with an emphasis in child development. I work for a special school district of St. Louis, and I believe that everyone has been given a voice. I believe that my voice was given to me to stand up for those who are unable or for those who are afraid to speak out. Social-emotional development is an integrative process through which children acquire the capacity to understand, experience, express, and manage emotions, as well as develop meaningful relationships with others. How is any of this possible with a mask? Many of the students in my classroom have autism, social-emotional delays, have endured different traumatic events, and many have speech and language delays as well. Quite a few of my students are nonverbal or speak very quietly. Imagine adding a mask. Some of my students have different degrees of medical issues, and seeing adults in masks is scary and causes anxiety. Wearing a mask has actually triggered many of my students into an emotional breakdown. They're looking for a soothing voice, a smile, and many times a hug. You add a mask and social distancing and you get none of that. Instead, you get fear, which ends in what? Trauma. You guys speak about it all the time. We get education on trauma all the time. And what are you guys doing? You're creating more trauma and fear in our children. Social distancing, walking around like zombies to maintain a distance of 6 feet and wearing a muzzle all day is not how I want my children living. And we'll be seeing the effects of this for generations. If you guys are familiar with the prominent Rockwood School District, they did a survey and it revealed that 852 students, out of 852 students, 550 had recently attempted to take their life. 550 had considered taking their life, 160 had actually attempted to take it, and 18 had attempted in 1 week. As a mother of 2, this is horrific. There is no pandemic COVID crisis nonsense. You guys are the real issue. You are using your man-given authority to try to rule and reign us, and nobody's going to take away my God-given authority and my God-given breath.
All right, the next speaker is Kelly Bohannon.
Yes, Mr. Shamir, I signed up for one issue that was on the agenda and one that was not.
Okay.
Is that acceptable? Can I speak now and then afterwards?
That's fine as long as we have time, yes.
Of course.
Yeah. And they're different topics.
They are different topics,
Okay.
yes. I first want to thank the board for following the CDC guidelines. I appreciate the expertise and the research that some of the people have done. But the overwhelming advice that we receive from doctors and scientists is that masking works, and even anecdotal evidence shows me that masking works, and it's not optimal. But we don't live in optimal times. We live in difficult times, and I'm sure kids are stressed, and I'm sure kids are really depressed. You know, my child was in online learning. I'm sorry. Am I not allowed to speak? Thank you. She was in online learning. It was very trying. It was suboptimal. You know, a lot of the kids weren't showing their faces. A lot of kids were, the teachers were sometimes wearing a mask. They weren't getting those cues. It was suboptimal. But we don't live in normal times, and we're not entitled to live in normal times. I'm a historian. I've studied the Black Death, and, we're so fortunate that we have the knowledge to protect ourselves. And the greatest tragedy would be to turn our back on that knowledge and just thrust ourselves into a pre-science time where there was nothing that you could do, where you just watched 50% of the population die. And I'm not saying that's the case with COVID, but that was the case with the Black Death. I'm sorry, if you signed up,
We
you'll have your
need to
time.
allow everyone to speak, and everyone has an opinion, and this is what this is for.
I didn't talk over anyone else when it was their time.
So let's please be respectful so we can continue this.
So my feeling is that nothing is going to be optimal, but I appreciate that you're doing everything you can to keep my daughter, who cannot get a vaccine yet, safe, and my son, who's in middle school, who has had his vaccine, but who can still contract the disease and bring it home to my daughter. He's already away at a camp that already makes me nervous. I'm uncomfortable about the parameters for lunch, but everybody that I've spoken to has been very sympathetic and understanding and done what they could to accommodate my concerns. So I can see the amount of pressure that's being placed upon you, but I personally don't know anyone who isn't concerned about their child's safety, particularly in the elementary schools, where we literally have no other tools to keep our children safe. So thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Vicki Palmer.
Hi, I just have two quick questions. Last year, with the bus situation and our kids being masked and separated by 6 feet as much as they could, we were dealing with quarantining issues. And so my question is, when I have 2 kindergartners who were potentially exposed on the bus and they missed 10 more days of school, I want to know what if you guys, I'm assuming the district went ahead and did the stats on how many kids actually did come down with COVID. Because if our numbers are low, that these kids potentially were exposed and did not show up having COVID, then I don't think it's worth our kids missing 10 more additional days of school for that. And so I'm curious as to what the district is doing about quarantining for this school year. I also appreciate the fact you guys did a poll in June. That was very nice. Unfortunately, you guys are not going by what the poll results were, but what the parents and staff and teachers wanted when we discussed this on Facebook and all the other social media. My understanding is people are defending it because of Delta variant. Again, with the Delta variant, I want to know, with the kids prior to the Delta variant and the polls, how many kids were dying and people were okay with going mask-free, or giving our children the option of going mask-free. And now that we have the Delta variant, how many kids are actually dying? So I would love it if you guys did another poll, and so that the parents who seem to think that these numbers would change drastically because of the Delta variant would be reassured to know that a lot of the district parents are still okay with us as parents giving an option as to what we want to do with our kids, if we want to mask them or not, just like many parochial schools are getting the chance of deciding if they want to mask their children. I understand the public schools are getting funded by millions of dollars to not give parents the option to unmask our children. One other thing, my child has recently been diagnosed with dyslexia. He is in first grade. Being on social media, I know there's a Lindbergh literacy page, and it's very discouraging to see how Lindbergh is doing on dyslexia. I've had several meetings with Long already, and I'm very happy with where we're going right now. I have a meeting set up in September, and I have to deal with Lindbergh and Special School District, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that progress is not the same as closing the gap when it comes to getting these kids caught up in dyslexia, in their reading. So, thank you.
Next is Poppy Gardner.
I thank you for the opportunity to address the Board of Education members. Regarding face masks, last month I request to do your own research of existing information that are based on scientific proof method, not opinion. Your grade incomplete. I did receive an email response from Dr. Craig Hamby, Director of Elementary Education. The CDC guideline conclusion basically says, more research needed. So they don't know, huh? Have been found safe. Really, I get a rash. Well, for my 11-year-old thinking, they're not safe and not effective. You need to do real research based on science, not guidelines. So, here in my 5th grade education belief, I'm young and healthy except for the mask face rash. Dr. Zelenko's protocol, which describes risk by age. In young and healthy people, this infection causes mild cold-like symptoms. There is an advantage for these people to be exposed to COVID-19, build up their antibodies, and have their immune system clear the virus. This will help the development of herd immunity and help prevent future COVID-19 pandemics. Although we have looked, we cannot find any science to support mask benefits. I recommend the following guidelines at Lindbergh. 1, those parents and students who believe masks protect them should have the option to wear them and they would feel protected. 2, those parents and students that do not believe masks have any value in school should have the option to not wear masks. They are willing to deal with the mild cold-like symptoms and have their system clear the virus. Last time I checked, this is still a free country. God bless America.
Next speaker, Kristin Gardner.
Hello, I'm Kristin Gardner. Sorry, let me put my mask away. My daughter does not want to wear a mask, and I support her decision. My husband and I will own her risk. Those students and faculty that choose to think masks are effective will be protected, right? So what's the issue? So I want to highlight the survey for the sake of accountability, your accountability. So the preference for optional masks, the parents in elementary school was 59%, middle school 67%, high school 76%. Staff, 65%, middle, 66%, high school, 54%, and the district, 64%. The students in middle school, 71%, and high school, 74%. It would appear that your decision is contrary to your employers, the parents, the taxpayers. I contemplated multiple reasons for your personal vote. I may be off base, but I want to share my thinking with the board and community parents. 1, masks are a personal choice, not a mandate. Parents should decide. 2, following the guidelines, do as I am told, We are not advocates for parents or students. We just want CYA. 3, masks are mandated because we are the school board and have a superior knowledge of what should be policy for the community. 4, masks are mandated because you made a commitment to an entity with the power to hold funding or disclose problematic information. 5, your attitude is you will like it or you will learn to like it. Touching on equity and inclusion push. My position is that until Lindbergh is top ranked in the state in the skills needed to prosper in society, I suggest you focus on delivering on reading, communication, and mathematics skills. Finally, thank you. Finally, my daughter will be entering middle school soon. We attended orientation and we're told the students cannot use lockers. This is crazy. What is the thinking here? Where can personal property be securely maintained? I need an answer on this one. In winter, she walks to school. Where will she put her coat and boots if the weather's bad? She's not gonna carry them around, and I'm not gonna have them risk as somebody steals them. I am a mama bear, and I am watching. I will continue to provide constructive input that will help you better prepare our children for the real world after graduation. Thank you.
So that's our last speaker in regards to agenda items, are those that spoke on also non-agenda items. But 7.0 then is communications, so we'll start with calendar of events. So Christy Watts, Board Secretary.
All righty, August is here and school will be starting on Monday. August 20th, we have professional learning for the staff. 23rd is first day of school. The 26th starts our advisory meetings and technology is first. Reminder that September 5th, we have no school. And September 9th is Student Life, our Board of Education Advisory. Then on September 14th, it's Teaching and Learning and then Finance. The 16th, September 16th is our next Board of Education meeting here at 7 p.m. And as always, it is open to the public. That's it.
All right, thank you. 7.02 is a report of meetings, so if anybody has a parent group meeting, state meeting, other sort of business meeting that they attended they'd like to report on, now would be the time.
Just went to Green and Gold on Saturday, and it was so nice to see the students out and all the athletes. It was really neat day.
Okay, 7.03 announcements. We have no announcements this evening. So now we'll move to the review of the upcoming board meeting agendas. So, Christy again?
Me again. As stated, our next Board of Education meeting will be September 16th here at 7 p.m. Our tentative items for the agenda that we'll be seeking approval on, as always, are the minutes, the Human Resource Personnel Report, financial items, and a second reading on policies. We would expect to have 2 for the record, transportation evaluation and community education evaluation. And as I stated, our meetings are always open to the public. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No board member appointments, so we'll move to 7.06, which is the MSBA report, which we will now play. So, Colin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's Board Report for the month of August. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at efforts to provide greater internet access to students throughout Missouri. Currently, about 23% of Missouri students lack internet access at home, while 84 school districts report students lack physical access to broadband. The Director of Broadband Development for the state of Missouri, Tim Arbeiter, told an audience at MSBA's recent Igniting Great Ideas Summit, both infrastructure and affordability are barriers to access for many students and families. Arbeiter says school boards can play an important role in improving internet access by partnering with others in their community.
But sometimes, as leaders, You just need to take the bull by the horns and say, what do we need to do to come alongside maybe our city manager, our presiding commissioner, and a few other folks to help maybe strategize as a team, how do we motivate, incentivize, and attract a provider? Because there are areas in our state where there is none or only one provider, and it makes it an extreme challenge.
Arbeiter says there are a number of state and federal programs now in place aimed at expanding broadband access in Missouri. Applications are opening this month for grants aimed at addressing the teacher shortage in Missouri. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has designated more than $50 million in coronavirus relief funds to establish teacher recruitment and retention grants for school districts. The goals of the grants include attracting more people to the teaching profession and providing greater support for current teachers to improve retention. DESE Assistant Commissioner Paul Katnick tells us he hopes many of the grants will be used to expand what are known as Grow Your Own programs aimed at encouraging high school students to become teachers.
Future Missouri teachers are sitting in Missouri school districts right now. That's where they're going to come from. And we've talked to way too many high school kids in school districts who never considered the teaching profession because no one's asked them if they would ever consider it. No one has said to a student, you would be a great teacher. I mean, you love math, you're good at it, you'd be a great math teacher. And we're not talking about valedictorian straight A students. Sometimes students that work hard in school make great teachers. And we as a profession have to think some succession planning here about furthering the profession after we're done.
Katnick says recruiting and retaining teachers must be a community effort.
It's not just a teacher who's agreed to run some club. It's a community effort because when a school can't find teachers, and we had examples of that this year where schools went virtual because they didn't have enough teachers, that impacts the whole community. So everybody in a community ought to care about this issue and band together and help support it. That's when it works at its best. That's what we've seen in districts with long-running programs. The entire community embraces it, and I just think school board members have such an important role in making it a priority, supporting superintendent and the school personnel and making it happen, making it work.
Katnick says Missouri's teacher shortage has only become worse during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that he has yet to talk to a school district leader who isn't facing teacher vacancies heading into the new school year. Registration is now open for the 2021 MSBA Annual Conference in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators to be held November 5th through 7th in Kansas City. The event will once again feature numerous breakout sessions and workshops, many presented by school leaders from districts throughout the state, along with a great lineup of general session speakers, all in a new location at the Kansas City Convention Center. Among the general session speakers this year is Gene Becker, a Missouri Public School graduate who served as President George H.W. Bush's chief of staff from the time he left office until his death in 2018. And don't forget the 2021 Safe Schools and Colleges Forum, sponsored by MSBA's Center for Education Safety, that will be held this year on November 4th in conjunction with the annual conference in Kansas City. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
All right, thank you, Colin. So 8.01 cabinet updates. I think we have Finance Committee update.
Yes, we had our Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday. We welcomed our new members from the applications that were vetted. And the first meeting with new members, we went over some of the website data of where they can find all the financial reports, history-wise, audits, also where to find the board packet information and how far back that goes if they're looking for some history on an item. We discussed all the financial items on this board agenda. That includes budget amendments, change orders on the prop, and the checks that are issued in the July, we're in August, right? In the July financials. So, thanks.
All right, thank you. 8.02, we do have one curriculum update. Dr. Jill Lawson is going to speak on social and emotional learning at Lindbergh.
And as Jill comes up to speak, I want to just take this time to reflect with our community, with our board, about the conversations we've continued to engage with our families. We've heard a lot over the last few months about concerns about critical race theory, and do we teach critical race theory within Lindbergh schools? And we do not. What we do focus on is developing and supporting our students' social and emotional learning. Are they self-aware? Do they have the skills to self-manage, to develop relationships, to be responsible decision makers, and have social awareness? And so our work with regard to our students is to help build these skills. And as you know, as we shared in our July board workshop, our Lindbergh Life Success skills are a key component of where these live and how we support our students as they integrate these skills within their academic environment and then beyond the academic environment as well. Over the last couple of days, Dr. Lawson and I have had the opportunity to go around to all of our buildings to talk about the Lindbergh Life Success skills with teachers. We have a few more buildings that we will work with tomorrow. And in our conversations, one of the things we continually ask our teachers to stop and reflect on as they're thinking about these skills and how these skills are being instructed in the classroom is, are they balanced? Are we being thoughtful about the diversity of thought and perspective that exists within our student environment? Are they age appropriate? Are we ensuring that what the discussions and the conversations are developmentally appropriate for our students? And are they connected to our Missouri learning standards and the work that we're doing as a district? And then, as always, if you think that you might be out of that realm, then we need to have further conversations about, is this an appropriate lesson? Is this an appropriate level of instruction? And then evaluate that further. So that is our work with regard to social emotional learning. And Dr. Lawson is going to take some time to talk about the process of how we've gotten here and the resources that we use to support this work.
Sure. Thank you so much for allowing me to come here and talk about social emotional learning at Lindbergh. If you want to go to the next slide, Colin. So Dr. Lake shared at our last board workshop meeting that on his listening and learning tour, he received some feedback from parents, and from that pulled 5 successful indicators that our parents were wanting to see within our district. And I'm going to touch on the second one, social emotional learning, here at Lindbergh. And so really this is an opportunity to share if this was of such great value to our parents that they mentioned that throughout the, and Dr. Lake received that feedback. We have an obligation to show what we are doing to meet that criteria. So why social emotional learning? And this is kind of an older one. This is some research from KSOL from 2011, Durlack and others. Research shows that social emotional learning not only improves achievement by an average of 11 percentile points, but it also increases those pro-social behaviors like kindness, sharing, and empathy. It will improve students' attitudes towards school and reduces depression and stress among students. In the next slide. So I don't know the math thing, sorry, I'm just gonna go with this. So the why, and some other things that's a little bit more with the 2017, the Aspen Institute, talking about programming in social emotional learning across the school year drives that increase in executive functioning, efficacy, persistence, pro-social behaviors, grades, and scores on standardized tests, which is, of course, we want to see our students do really well. Children with stronger social and emotional competencies are also more likely to enter and graduate from college, succeed in their careers, and have positive work and family relationships, better mental and physical health, reduce criminal behaviors, and become engaged citizens. So that's just a little on the why, and that one is 2017, just a little bit more recent, and talks a little bit about the evidence of why we do social emotional learning. So I'm going to get into the what we do here. So if you'll go to the next slide. So talking about our process, we really have been talking about what does social emotional look like at Lindbergh. So thinking about that particular thing, we received some feedback from parents through advisories. Maybe it was our Lindbergh Parent Advisory, through our Student Life Advisory, talking to teachers, just really making sure that social emotional learning we know is important to our families. It's been brought up on that listening and learning tour. but where are our particular needs? And one of the biggest needs that came up was really that consistency. We need to ensure, like, if we're doing strong social emotional practices at one building, that it's also being done at other buildings. So really that was a huge need, having that consistency, making sure that we are laying out that foundational social emotional experience for students, that social emotional experience for students throughout our district. What's happening at Truman is also happening at Spearing. And so thinking about that, we knew that that was an important need, but we also know that character education is really important, so we did not want to see that go to the wayside either. So talking about our social emotional resources, we really have tied together character, because we still really hold that to be an important part of our education experience for students, but also those skills within social emotional. How can we get our students to show mastery and understanding of those? We also looked at some materials that were out there that we thought really met our needs. We had a lot of parent feedback. It was great talking about our bullying supports and how can we bring in lessons on bullying as well. And so when we were looking for particularly the K-5, we also wanted to see how could we bring this all together and make it two separate things that were being, too much learning for kids and too many different areas being pulled in too many different directions. So how can we bring this all in to be one thing? We piloted some materials at our elementary. We piloted Second Step is one of the curriculum pieces that we worked on with our elementary schools, and we collected some feedback for that. The pilot was around 2019 and 20, and last year was our very first year of implementing Second Step and Character Strong, which I will talk about here in some additional slides. And so last year was that very first year of implementation. If you go to the next slide, we did receive some feedback. When I time marked this feedback as going through, it was March 2020, so we all know that was kind of when things hit. But here's two things that I just pulled. I thought they were really fun to share with the board about how our parents felt when their kids were talking about it at home. If their kids didn't talk about it at home, they probably didn't have as great a feedback to provide as far as the experience that the students were sharing. But in this particular first one, the student said that her daughter shared about being assertive when she needs something, and also about solving problems with peers. So that's always great to hear. Another parent shared that her daughter enjoyed the lessons about managing emotions and how she can better react in certain situations. The parents stated that they talked about how she was actually applying the strategies, both inside and outside of school, and the parent appreciated the learning on how to calm down and also use some of those strategies as well. Going to the next slide, some feedback from our teachers. They really do love the lessons. I've been in 6 buildings thus far since our teachers have been back. And teachers are talking about they really appreciate students using that common language, particularly around bullying and also the classroom lessons. It really gives kids an opportunity to role model and practice that assertiveness that we all want to see our students do. At the really young levels, first grade and kindergarten, the Second Step curriculum resources, come with stuffed animals, and the teachers talk a lot about how the kids really enjoy those things. It's very age appropriate. The teachers also like the scripts, the videos, and the activities, and there's also home links that can come home and parents can do with their students, knowing that parents are very busy, may not always have time, so it's always an optional thing. Teachers did share, when are we supposed to do this? That was a big concern during that first year of implementation. And what we had to do was go in with training saying, this is not an additional thing. This is something you would do during your class meetings, which is a structure we want all of our teachers to do, is have a class meeting, that time to build community with their students. If you go to the next slide. So just to give you an idea, in case anybody wants to look into any of these, you can Google these resources, Second Step and Character Strong. They are available to do. You are also, anyone is always welcome to give me a call. I've had a very fortunate meeting yesterday with 2 parents. I thought it was extremely productive. We went through some resources and more, and just really talking about what is important to them, what's important for their child. And it was just really great to hear that feedback and think about how can we reflect, how can we take that feedback, how can we move forward with it, making sure that we're always being inclusive of all people in their different, and their perspectives as well. So moving into the next slide. If you think about social emotional, the big picture of it, we have our tier 1, which is what we use second step and Character Strong for. We want every student to have that foundational component of it, those lessons where they are. And then we have tier 2. This is for students after receiving their universal supports may just need a little bit of extra help. So we have interventions in social emotional learning for them as well. And then in tier 3, when students need a lot more help, we can dig into some social emotional supports that are more targeted and based specifically on their need. So I'll talk a little bit about that if you go to the next slide. So here's some of our tier 1, the basic structure, the how we do it. So I talked a little bit about the why, the what we do, and here's how it is done in our district, social emotional learning. At the elementary level, social emotional learning is conducted during class meetings. Those meetings last about 10 to 20 minutes long. The topics within in second step are skills for learning, empathy, emotion management, and problem solving. Those are the 4 big strands. They are in kindergarten through 5th grade. Those are those topics. I'm happy to sit down and share those with anybody who is ever interested in looking at any of those as well. In middle school, the social emotional learning is done during flyer time. Social emotional is not all they do in flyer time, but when they do, it's typically about 1 to 2 times a week. Those topics in the Character Strong resource, which is what they use there, are values and purposes, empathy and compassion, emotion, understanding and regulation, goals and habits, leadership and teamwork. The high school is PAC. They call it PAC. It stands for, they changed the acronym, so I had to write this down more for me than for anybody else, but Perspectives, Academic, and Community. It's a time for the students to get together and build community. I put the topics here. They also use Character Strong as a resource, but I would say they do not go through all of the lessons in Character Strong, just to make sure that I'm being fully transparent. As we move to the high school, we really start to think about career development and how students talk about the things that they are interested in, the careers that they want to engage in, and how they use those strengths, their own personal strengths, to move forward. So social emotional probably it would probably be less explicitly taught as the student moves into the high school. It's not that it does not exist, so I don't want to send that message, but the shift is really towards that career development as students move into the high school. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that our counselors also do lessons. These are push-in lessons. These happen more at the elementary level and the middle school level than they do at the high school. Again, if a counselor is pushing into a classroom to talk about their curriculum, their counseling curriculum, they're more heavily focused on that career development as well. But you will see, if you ever want to find out more information about the counseling curriculum and the standards that they use, you can find those on the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's website, and they are part of the Missouri Learning Standards. They're based around these 3 big ideas of social emotional development, academic development, and career development. And so those are K through 12. Those are the 3 big strands that are for all counselors according to the Missouri Comprehensive Counseling Guide. Next slide, please. So we have a foundation for social emotional learning through class meetings, flyer time, and PAC at the high school. When students need more support in social emotional learning or meeting some of those social emotional skills, we start to move towards tier 2. This is not for every single student. These are for students who just need a little extra help. And the goal behind that is to support them and get them back on track. This does involve parent involvement. It does include parents being a part of that plan. What does their student need? It also can be supported and facilitated by our school counselors. Sometimes it's individual, sometimes it's group sessions, and it's mostly aligned to CASEL's 5 competencies, where a student may be struggling or having a lagging skill in any of these 5 particular areas, such as social awareness, self-awareness, relationship skills, emotional management, responsible decision-making, but we also look at function too. We may look at, is a student trying to access something or avoid something? So we look at a few different things, and we learn a lot of that through our partnership with Special School District. They have a lot of great supports and things that we as a partner district are able to learn and access through that partnership. For tier 3, when a student may need a lot more help regarding social emotional learning, we, again, number one, get the parents involved in that, because there may be some type of assessment. And when we're assessing students on individual skills, we want that parent to be involved and knowledgeable about what is going on. Sometimes this is a referral done by the school, but sometimes it's a parent calling in saying, I have a concern, I really need your help. So these can also be supported Tier 3 by our school counselors, but our social workers are licensed clinical social workers, which is amazing. So that is like really a great thing to have. We have 3 in the district. They are also there to help support the student, but also build that connection with the family too, like talking to the family about here's what we're working on, here's how you can help at home as well, and give us feedback on what is working and what is not. We also have partnerships with Children's Service Funds. So we do memorandums of understanding with not too many, but a few that we know are tried and true that provide great services. We have those therapeutic supports in our district. So we will have youth in need therapists. We have CHADS providing social emotional, that's usually a parent referral for a CHADS social emotional teacher, but we also have supports through Provident, and these are all therapeutic supports that are housed within our school. They also align with these competencies from CASEL, but they may also dig into some more targeted specific lagging skills depending on the student's need. So if you move to the next slide, this is just kind of an overall. I do want to say that even though this looks like a cone, I think now that I look at it, I don't want people to think that one thing is those class meetings and the counseling lessons, like not all students get those counseling lessons. So, but I just wanted to kind of give that overall big picture of where we are and what we're trying to avoid, as I'll mention here in a second. Class meetings, flyer time pack. That's a time for students to really dig into those character lessons, those social emotional lessons, and to practice those 4 C's, which are critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. That is really what that is all for. Those are those opportunities where we give kids skills to learn about it, talk about it, and practice it. Those counseling lessons are for all students too. Those are Tier 1 supports. Those are all based on the grade level expectations, as I just stated. When students don't get it, or may need a little bit of help, we have those Tier 2 interventions. And those are evidence-based interventions that we employ to help support the students. And I just want to reiterate that parents are involved in that part of the process. When students really need a lot of support, those targeted interventions are brought in, and parents are, again, a part of those. And we do use evidence-based supports for our students. That partnership with Children's Service Fund is really for something much, much more intense. Those are therapeutic supports, and those happen by providers outside of Lindbergh schools that we have MOU, Memorandum of Understandings with. And then if we still are not making gains, students aren't responding to the interventions that we need, we will consider eligibility under IDEA. But our goal is to always avoid getting to that part. We want to see what we can do on our side before we ever have to move to that eligibility component. So if you go to the next slide, just wanted to give you a little bit about what social emotional is, that big picture from what happens in the classroom, what happens with our counselors, and what happens when students aren't responding to the things that we are or need additional supports throughout.
Any questions?
Okay.
Thanks, Jill.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Lawson. Appreciate it. All right, so we'll move on to 9.00, or 9.0, not O's. Action items by consent. We have action items 9.01 to 9.17, although there are none in 9.07 to 9.08. So would anyone like to remove any of these items for individual consideration? All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve consents 9.01 through 9.17, noting there are none for 9.07 and 9.08?
So moved.
Motion by Matt, second.
Second.
Second by Christy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, so then we'll move to 10.0. We got individual action items. We have none this evening, so moving to 11.0, which is reports. We have 3 for the record reports, 11.0101 annual financial secretary of the board report. And this is for information only, and if you have any questions, you can contact Joelle with any of those questions, correct? Okay. 11.0102, the Green Light Plan. This item is also presented for information only, and you can contact Dr. Lake or any of the other cabinet members with questions on that particular item. 11.0103, the District Student Assessment Plan, also for informational purposes, and you can contact Dr. Sparks or Dr. Lawson with any questions on that particular report. 11.02, we have no other reports. 11.03, review of board policies. We have 2 policies, I believe, right, under review. So these are presented for your first reading, brought back in the September meeting. So any questions, you can contact either Joelle or Brian on those 2 board policies. So given that, we'll move to 12.0, which is citizen comments regarding non-agenda items. So we'll hear those comments at this time. Again, a reminder, we have 30 minutes total, which I think we have enough time here for all those that have signed up. You do get 3 minutes again, so when I call your name, come forward and give us your name and the item you wish to speak on. And if somebody has spoke on information that you're speaking on, you don't have to come in and speak again. But everyone's welcome to speak and share what they have with us. Just make sure that, let's be respectful and let everyone have their 3 minutes. So I will call up the first person on the list, Melissa Shelton.
Hello. I'm Melissa Shelton, a retired educator, a counselor, and the mother of 4 girls. 3 are black and 1 is white. I'm here to speak to you from the heart and from personal experiences. To begin, I want to thank you. As I look at this board in front of me and I look around this room, I see no other explanation for the efforts this district is making to prioritize the essential work of equity, diversity, and inclusion, except that the hard truth is racism in our community and in the world around us is an issue that has to be addressed. I understand that there are solid steps being taken in the district, and as a district, we're in the midst of a 5-year plan that began in 2018 to become a more welcoming, equitable, and inclusive environment. In 2018, that was quite an undertaking. The honest to goodness truth is that was a walk in the park compared to the recent emergence of the buzzword critical race theory. I want you to know that although perhaps not as loud and not as organized, there are many, many community members who understand that critical race theory is an academic concept that's more than 40 years old and is not something being taught in our schools. The hot debates are that we're seeing seem to be more of a psychological defense to unwanted change by people that are really, really comfortable with status quo. Throwing out critical race theory provides a barrier to change and causes just enough distraction and chaos that it has the potential to stall the progress that has to occur in our schools and communities. Continued diversity training for teachers, reflective communication, history lessons that are taught in depth and truthfully, and thoughtful reflections of how racism has impacted the world around us must occur. I was given permission by my 12-year-old to share a situation that happened with her. I dropped my eager 5-year-old off at school one morning, bright-eyed and ready to conquer what was ever placed in front of her, and she was ready to hit school running. Her backpack was still shiny, her shoes were unscuffed, and her bow was bigger than her head, and I thought maybe I had the cutest kid in the world, definitely the brightest. I must have gloated a little on the way to work, and she waved confidently. That evening, when I put her to bed, she said, "Don't make me breakfast, Mom. The black kids have to eat breakfast at school." I asked her what in the world she meant, and she said that a teacher got her as soon as she got in the door and said, "Your bus got here 10 minutes ago, get to breakfast." She tried to explain to them that she didn't eat breakfast, that her mom made her breakfast. She said the teacher was mad, so she ate a second breakfast. As a 25-year veteran of public schools, I shamefully admit it took that with my own child to realize how much work has to be done. So again, I thank you. I urge you not to let the district goal of inclusion, equity, and diversity be lost in the noise that you may encounter. Thank you.
Next speaker on the list is Falia Davenport.
Good evening. I'm Falia Davenport. I'm a mom, a multiracial woman of color, and a professor. I believe this district is moving towards a more diverse and inclusive education. I believe every child and family should be represented in the textbooks, reading books, and curriculum in the classrooms and school buildings. When a child sees themselves or their family members in the readings, images, or lessons, they feel a sense of belonging. I want to encourage all teachers to work towards having diverse and inclusive classrooms. I encourage this because my daughter and I are different shades. However, she is mine and I am hers. We need to start seeing through the lens of not just black and white, but understand the spectrum that lies between. Just because my daughter may look like many of you in this room, she does not necessarily share your cultural heritage. She is a woman of color. I do not want anyone in this educational system labeling her different because she may appear to fit in your box. One of my biggest concerns is how are teachers trained to work with diverse children from diverse homes and backgrounds? What professional training will you provide for them that is continual? Will this be transparent to us? What textbooks will be used? Will there be funding for supplemental materials for the teachers? Will there be funding for guest speakers to assist teachers on certain lessons? I ask that teachers step up and try and ask for help if necessary. I know for some this may be uncomfortable, but I as a parent, as a mother, and as a woman of color will step up and I will help you. I ask for the administration to hear their asks and to follow through because the burden cannot solely be placed on their shoulders. In this time, teachers will need as much assistance and guidance as possible because it's a slow process to achieve what the ultimate goal is, which is a diverse and inclusive education. And on a side note, I actually have worked with kindergarten teachers, especially through COVID, and I did lessons for their students and read books all through virtual learning for them. And I work it always around my university schedule, and I've actually come in and done guest lectures to actually help teachers. And I'm very willing to have those conversations and to help. And what I want to leave you all with is this. Our children are a reflection of us, and sometimes they can see the cracks before you can. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jason Fry.
Hey everybody. Coming up here is such an adrenaline rush. I think I'm getting addicted to it. I come here every month now. So first of all, on masks, I want to say I continue to support our school district's mask mandate, and I believe there is evidence, and our ICUs are filling up. I have 3 relatives who died from COVID. 2 of them could have been protected by masks and weren't. One of them was a vaccine skeptic and passed away just a couple weeks ago. But I really came here to talk about critical race theory and equity. I agree critical race theory is a boogeyman that is an academic concept that's not being taught at our schools, but it's being used as a blanket term for any kind of equity in education, especially in history curriculum. And there are going to be people who speak against equity. They're going to use a straw man argument where they say, well, equity means equal outcomes. No one believes that. No one who's promoting equity believes equity means equal outcomes. What you do with the straw man argument is you take a legitimate argument, you tell people that it means something completely different, and then you defeat that, and then you look like you won, but you actually haven't dealt with the real issue. So equity would be, if somebody has a wheelchair, a student has a wheelchair, if you believe in equal outcomes, you would say, well, then all the students need wheelchairs so they can all have equally challenging times getting to their classrooms. But no one advocates for that because that's not what equity means. Equality would say that student needs to struggle to get to the classroom however they can. Maybe they can ask some other students to carry them up the stairs. Equity really says, what if we had an elevator? And most of us would agree that's a pretty reasonable thing to allow equal access to the classroom for a student in a wheelchair. That's equity. When it comes to equity in history curricula or in other ways, it means if a student's struggling, maybe they get extra attention. It doesn't mean you slow the whole class down, but you do find a way to get that student some extra help. If you have students in your classroom who are of color, who are of different backgrounds, they get to learn about their history as well as the history of the dominant group in the classroom. There are definitely white supremacists who want to stop people from telling the whole truth about history. We know that there's this theory called the lost cause that says that the Civil War was really about states' rights and tyranny, when we all know that if you read the letters that the actual states sent to the U.S. government at the start of the Civil War, they said they were seceding so that they could continue to enslave black people. So telling the whole story is important. Let's keep it up, and don't be afraid of the people who are using critical race theory as a boogeyman. Thank you.
Next, we have Amy Minton.
Hello, and thank you to the school board for giving me the opportunity to address and applaud your diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at Lindbergh. I'm a mother of 2 Lindbergh students, one at the high school and one at the elementary level. We moved into the district 3 years ago and were sold on this school district by some of our Lindbergh alumni friends, as well as many of the accolades that we've all heard about, read about, and experienced. We relocated here from a district that was pretty diverse, obviously much more diverse than this one, but equally decorated. I had high hopes we would have a smooth transition, and imagine my surprise when 3 years ago, when my son was a freshman, he came home from a Lindbergh sports team practice and told me that all of his white teammates were throwing the N-word around in the locker room. This is the year of our Lord 2021, so it was a little bit mind-blowing for me that this is still happening when my son just moved. He's brand new and he moved into the district, and under cover of, being behind closed doors, children are getting these words from somewhere. My high schooler since quit that team, and he found camaraderie within the LGBTQ plus community and club, and got involved with the Black Student Union. Those groups welcomed him with open arms. They welcomed him with empathy and kindness, and as a white cisgender student, they were accepting and understanding, which replicated what we've been talking about with this diversity, equity, and inclusion. He was the white cisgender guy in this situation, and the groups that were the most welcoming and kind were those who continue to be othered by some families in this district. This isn't the first time I've attended one of these board meetings, but it's the first time I've been up to speak. So I wanted to just touch on critical race theory, since that seems to be the boogeyman. Critical race theory is an academic construct taught in law schools that is not merely the product of it doesn't study individual bias and prejudice. It's about laws and embedding policies that are racist into our systems. But you aren't teaching about sundown towns in Missouri. You aren't teaching about white families having nearly 8 times the net worth of black families and how that might affect our school district and what it looks like.
Thank you. Next, we have Mackie Randleman.
Maki Randleman. Tonight I'm talking about ELA 10th honor. My daughter is taking this. So, and I'm here representing many parents' concerns. Some of the books that are assigned in this course as choices. The Girl Who Fell from the Sky is about a girl who survived a fall when her mother committed suicide with her children. A little boy witnesses the scene. I quote, "The baby was still in her mother's arms, a gray, sticky porridge pouring from the underside of her head. The girl was heaped on top of the boy's body, a bloody, helpless pillow. The bones from the bottom of the boy's leg poked through his jeans at his thigh. Later, this girl goes through a rape." I quote, "He sticks his finger into me, and it feels like pen jamming into a top. I feel his weight on me and his hand spreading my legs farther apart. He is taking the thing I thought I was giving. It's like my body thinks, surrender, beautiful." Then her grandmother comes in. "Maybe she heard the small noise I let out when he thrust harder to get deeper into me, dry." Another book, Monday's Not Coming, is about a girl who finds her best friend's dead body in the freezer. Monday, she was killed by her mother, and the mother killed another child and stored both bodies while the siblings still living in the house. The book is full of words such as A word, female dog, D word, F word, and I'm censoring the bad words. Another book, Handmaid's Tale, is about a woman in a religious cult forced sexual ceremony, and I quote, "My red skirt is hitched up to my waist, though no higher. Below it, the commander is F-ing. What he is F-ing is the lower part of my body. The commander F's with a regular 2/4 marching stroke on and on like a tap dripping. Arousal and orgasm are no longer so necessary. He comes at last with a stifled groan as of relief. I untangled myself from her body. Stand up, the juice of the commander runs down my legs." And this book has a graphic novel version, and it exists in our high school library. I cannot go through other books. They are all disturbing. These are R-rated, on borderline of X. They are available at high school library and categorized correctly adult. Here's my call to actions. 1, R-rated and adult content books should be stored behind the counter at school library as restricted books, and the student should present parental consent to check them out. 2, these books should not be promoted in the reading list by Lindbergh schools, not to mention being assigned in classrooms. This is not for minor students to be requested to read by their adult
3
educators.
minutes per speaker, you know that.
And
You've been here.
investigation should be done on all books in the
Next
current
is
curriculum in all grades.
Blumenkemper.
This is not only 10th grade, and I ask you to remove this kind of content.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Marie Blumenkemper. I'm speaking on literacy. My husband and I have been residents of Lindbergh School District for the past 10 years. We have 6 children, all school age, and our oldest 2 sons are enrolled at Lindbergh High School. Our other 4 children either no longer attend Lindbergh or never attended the district. The reason? We do not have confidence in the district's ability to educate our children using the current literacy program. There's a story behind our decision to withdraw and how we lost our confidence in Lindbergh, and tonight I'd like to share that with you. Several years ago, when our current 7th grader began kindergarten, he struggled with many basic skills. He was frustrated, and we were told the school was keeping an eye on him and that they wouldn't let him fail. He would come around, it was probably just taking him a bit longer. During 1st grade, our son's frustration began to build. He didn't like school. He was really struggling with learning how to read. I scheduled a meeting with his teachers and the school's administration and voiced my concerns. I was told, he will get it, he's making slow progress, but that's okay. And since he was so behind, my son began receiving daily reading intervention. However, reading continued to be a struggle for him. My husband and I were not satisfied, and so we had our son privately tested. Achievement and IQ testing revealed that our son had several learning deficits and dyslexia. It was recommended that he would benefit from a research-based reading program that provides direct instruction in letter-sound correspondence for decoding of unknown words. When we shared this information with our school, we were not well received. We were told our child would not qualify for any extra testing or resources, and with continued reading intervention, he would become a successful reader. That's when I began to realize how Lindbergh's curriculum was failing our child. Lindbergh uses a balanced literacy program, Lucy Calkins, instead of a structured literacy program, which our son desperately needed. Instead of being taught sound symbol relationships and decoding skills, he was being taught to guess at words based on picture cues. While he made some reading progress by the end of 1st grade, our son continued to slip back below grade level through the rest of his elementary years. He struggled not only with reading, but with spelling, writing, math. It was all connected. Homework was difficult, and my husband and I spent hours each week working with him. He still lacked that strong reading foundation. We hired a tutor so he could learn the basic structured literacy skills Lindbergh had failed to teach. By the end of 5th grade, he was finally reading at grade level. However, as his parent, I was ready to get off this roller coaster ride we had been on for the past several years. How could I be assured that he would thrive in middle school? My husband and I made the decision to withdraw our son from Lindbergh and enroll him in a private school where his educational needs would be better met. Today, a year later, he is thriving. And so, by sharing this with you, I hope you all consider my concerns. Balanced literacy, Lucy Calkins, does not work for all students. I ask why. Why would you continue to use this program? Why not implement a research-based structured literacy program that will work for all kids? And to those parents with similar concerns who are out there listening, please speak out, speak up, and advocate for your children because this district will not. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Jessica Huff.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jessica Huff, and I'll be reading a statement from the Lindbergh Equity and Diversity Coalition, also known as LEAD. The Lindbergh Equity and Diversity Coalition would like to thank the Lindbergh administration for an informative and impactful workshop last month, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in our district. We are encouraged by the partnership with Core Collaborative in training our educators to be more intentional about creating a culture of belonging and dignity for all students and look forward to seeing it implemented in the coming school year. We are especially grateful for Dr. Lake's remarks about the why. Why is Lindbergh engaging in this work? According to Dr. Lake, it's because the community asked for it. Through his engagement with the community upon first arriving at Lindbergh, Dr. Lake identified 5 top success measures for students in our district. Those success measures include high-quality teachers, social and emotional well-being of students and staff, student mastery of collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity, personalized learning for staff and student satisfaction. Diversity, equity, and inclusion work in our schools addresses 3 out of 5 of these success measures. In addition, Dr. Sparks reminded the community that diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives align with the latest iteration of the Missouri School Improvement Plan called MSIP 6. MSIP 6 is focused on continuous improvement for all schools, the preparation of each student for life beyond high school, and promoting practices that lead to healthy school systems. The Missouri Department of Education believes high expectations, a clear vision, and a few very focused, high-impact goals will be critical to drive the improvement efforts necessary to bring about positive results. Given the community feedback and state guidelines, investment in diversity, equity, and inclusion in our district just makes sense. As we have stated in the past, we are encouraged by the work being done at Lindbergh to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, but Lindbergh has a long road ahead to truly transform our community. LEAD is here to support these efforts and garner community buy-in through our continued outreach and relationship building. We understand that the work of making our district a safe and equitable place for all students is the responsibility of every Lindbergh parent and staff member. We wish everyone in the community a happy, healthy, and safe start to the school year. Thank you.
Next, Mallory Sitzcorn.
What is equity, and why hasn't our district been able to define that for us? Well, here's why. Equity is a perception. Give two kids a piece of cake and ask them to share it. Does one kid end up with more because he's bigger? Do they both get the same size piece? Does one kid accept a smaller half with lots of icing? You see, there's no universal, rational application to equity because it's a subjective evaluation. Equity at Lindbergh is applied to our children based on the perception of those in charge, our superintendent and our Board of Education. It is being applied to achieve a certain outcome. One of those outcomes is to have proportional disciplinary incidents based on race and other immutable characteristics. To achieve this, Lindbergh has incorporated restorative practices. This program has been implemented despite the fact that the key findings in the RAND Corp randomized control trial study reported in the U.S. Department of Education Parent and Educator Guide to School Climate Resources were not positive. The findings from this study were teachers like it, but they don't have time for it. It reduced overall suspensions for certain groups of students, specifically African American and female students, but no reductions for white students or male students. There are no reductions of suspensions for serious infractions involving violence, weapons, or arrests. There are negative effects on academic achievement for African American students, all middle school students, and overall negative effects on math achievement. There are negative effects on student ratings of teachers, classroom management practices related to safety and discipline, and negative effects on students' overall assessment of teacher performance. So basically, there are lots of additional costs and no real benefit from this program, except that our board's perception of equity is achieved, yet academics suffer. Think about equity in terms of grades. Lindbergh's going to a new grading system also based on the perception of equity. Once again, equity is applied so the same proportion of students based on their race receive similar grades. It doesn't matter how hard someone works or how much they learn. In fact, the school is forcing teachers to grade students based on state learning standards, something historically used to evaluate and grade schools as a whole, not students as individuals. In addition, they've added something, and are grading our children on it, called Lindbergh Life Skills. These life skills tell our students how and when to use their character skills to achieve success. This is a big problem. According to the book Character Strengths Interventions, a field guide for practitioners, character skills are never supposed to be prescriptive, only descriptive. It should always be left to the child to decide what character skills should be used to achieve success. Instead, at Lindbergh, our children will be forced to conform with someone's vision in order to achieve success at school. Not to mention that there is no easy way to explain how our children achieve these skills and receive their grades for them. Grading for equity is simply a way to affect grades to ensure that a racially proportional, equitable outcome is achieved, and it leaves parents with no real assessment of their child's success academically.
Right, thank you.
We can push back, and we have opt-outs for those who are interested. We have some to turn in tonight, and more are coming. Parents, push back against this.
You can just set them here. I'll make sure everybody gets them. Thank you. Last speaker, Kelly Mohanan.
Well, I mean, I've been respectful, but somehow
Okay.
you guys don't seem to feel like that's incumbent upon you to return it.
That's enough. All right, 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to speak in support of equity. I graduated in 1986. This was a very different school at that time. I grew up in a household where both of my parents were openly racist, and I went into a college that was much more diverse than my experience here. There were 2 African-American kids that I met the entire time that I was in Lindbergh, from kindergarten through high school, 2. They were really nice kids, but that was really tiny. And then I went to college, and I met people from all over the world, and I had an African-American roommate, and my mother flipped out. She's like, people aren't going to eat with you. I'm like, oh my God. If they're not going to eat with me because I have a black roommate, I don't want to eat with them. It's not a problem. And of course, it wasn't a problem because times have changed. As a historian, I find what's fascinating about history is that it's a kaleidoscope of experiences. It has been taught in the past, and it was when I went to Lindbergh, as a single color from the rainbow. Just one lens, one perspective. And what I find fascinating about the American Revolution is, what did that mean to the unlanded white men who would not have a vote? What did it mean to the Native Americans who were being dispossessed from their land? What did it mean for African American enslaved who would have no part in this new freedom and this new liberty? What did it mean to all the women who would have no part in this new liberty, this new freedom, this new right to determine what happens to you? And the history of the United States has been expanding all those benefits that were at first kept very close to the chest by the ruling class. It's a wonderful story. It hasn't made me less patriotic to learn that it's been a struggle, to learn that people struggle to get along. We see that everywhere all the time. People struggle to get along. But it's something that we have to do because we all share this planet together, and we can't understand each other if we don't know where we're coming from. And if we only know our history from one perspective, then we can't relate to other people. We can't understand where they're coming from. We're going to talk past each other. So I really want to thank the school board for trying to expand what our children think about, the perspectives that they consider when they think about an issue, and teaching them to relate to other people's experiences and not just say, because it doesn't work in the classroom, it doesn't work in your home, to just say, you're wrong and you don't have a right to feel that way. That's not how you resolve a conflict.
All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone who spoke this evening. And I'll remind everyone, let's be respectful of one another and courteous. We want to continue having these citizen statements. It's not a requirement to have those, but we appreciate people coming up and taking their 3 minutes and giving that opportunity to everyone. Foundationally, we're here to educate kids and support kids, and respectfulness and courtesy are 2 foundational things. So let's keep that in mind. 13.0 is recess. As we already conducted our executive session, there's no need. So we move to 15.0, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn board meeting 1537?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Jen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Board meeting 1537 is adjourned.